Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Nancy Drew. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we had the whole situation with George wanting to make today the day, because obviously they end up finding out that the cops are coming to pick up Mr. Bobbsy's thing where he has like all those items he's collected and stuff. So it's all going to be in police custody, but luckily they were able to get Carson to help like start an injunction to stop it. So like he made it seem like this is in conflict with something related to Asher Davies. So it's like, right, he doesn't want them touching any of this stuff, which does come up with a little bit of a complication between him and Jean, which even Ryan's like, oh, like, how are you going to make this up to Gene? And it's because like obviously you have like a thing for, he's like, what? No, I don't. Like, let's just focus on this. I also love that he's like, oh yeah, we drove my car here because it's like, it's faster, plus he pumps the brakes. And he's like, I mean, no, I'm also here for, moral support as well. But they don't feel like Carson in all the way about the 19th century soul splitter debt. And he's just like, right, I did something, now George's life is in the balance, so we need this. So luckily, they were able to get it. Granted, they spilled an elixir that made them turn into teenagers again. So I guess it gave Nancy an opportunity to meet. It kind of sucks when you have to kind of be the adult. It's like, right, she has to rein in both of her dads. I guess it gives her an insight into kind of seeing who both of her dads were when they were teenagers to some extent. Because it's not like it just turns them into any teenagers. It turns them into who they are. Like, they just stay in their adult bodies, but have the mental capacity and just, like, the capacities of being just a teenager and just being wild. Because it's interesting because, like, Ace and Nancy, not full-blown full housing it, but they kind of had to play parental roles. Because even later on, after spending the day with them, Ace called up his mom and apologized about everything he ever did. Like, right, like the time I lost the keys in the supermarket parking lot, or the times like I didn't listen to you. Because he's like, right, now being around teenagers, like, man, I realized how much teenagers suck, and you had to like deal with that on top of everything. But he's like, don't worry, I'll see you at dinner Friday. But it's like, yeah, I'm just kind of sorry with like, it's that, like, it just put things in perspective, especially like how he's kind of be like my questionable choices lately, like the situation has kind of put you and dad in more like you. So he's kind of apologizing for all of that all around. But granted, it ended up turning into it, because I even love that Ace was like, dude, where's my Carson? I'm like, yeah, it turns into a dude, where's my car situation. Because it's like, would you leave the freaking, which I haven't seen that movie in forever, dude. I love that movie. I don't care how people feel about it. I love that movie, dude. It's just so good. Dude, what's yours say? Sweet. But what does mine say? Dude, but what does mine say? Sweet. But what dude, I love it. I love it so much, man. Dude, where's my car? It's over here, dude. Oh. I'm not going to sit here and just quote the movie the entire time. And then. Okay. That's enough. I was like, dude, that made me so nostalgic for that movie. I've not seen that in years, dude. Oh, that's crazy. But yeah, like I said, it turned into a dude, where's my car moment, just like, where's this soul splitter? Like, yeah, but after we found it, like, we can go motorbike. And she's like, no, but we're going back to all the places we were before. So it means motorbikes? And Nancy's just like, I think not. So luckily she rushes the soul splitter over to Bess, because she was making plans with Addie, but she had to cancel last second. It's like, oh, it's like with an X or something. And then she got quiet, and it's like, oh, okay. And she's like, yeah, thanks for understanding and stuff like that. Once again, I meant to look into it. I was like, why does that actress who plays Addie look so familiar? I can't place it. I meant to look into it, but I'm going to look into it afterwards because I can't remember. But I thought it was so interesting how obviously, like, Bess, I mean, you gotta give props to Bess. Like, this is a last minute thing. She had read up on the soul splitter a little bit, but this allowed her to read, like, she got everything prepared and ready to jump on. I mean, because we're still dealing with the whole, like, Hannah thing, which I talked about this in The Flash, because she is playing Kristen. I get to feel the actress who plays Hannah is playing Kristen Kramer on The Flash. I don't know how often she's going to pop up in The Flash, or whether she's going to be like an even bigger part this season. Because she's at least in the first episode of the season, so we'll see if she pops up the rest of the season or not. But that might be why we might not be seeing Hannah too much, because she might be bouncing between the shows, or they just probably narratively, either that's the reason why they narratively wrote it that Hannah's not in it a lot, or they just naturally wrote it like that, and that gave her more time to be on The Flash. I don't know. I'm curious to see how that works out. But whatever the case may be, it's like, right, Hannah's still missing, so they don't even have her to rely on. They have to rely on Bess. But Bess is doing her woman in white thing. I am surprised they didn't turn to Constance in this situation, but it's like, right, I mean, who knows if she's busy or not. There might not be much she can help. She's probably instilled Bess with all she knows, so it's just like, right, just following the research and stuff like that and activating it. So they do get the Soul Splitter finally, and, you know, Bess, well, Nancy drops it off to Bess and they end up activating it, like after George had already started drinking, well, the concoction, and it's having effect on her. Basically, the way she described it, it's like being an untangled astronaut, in a sense that, like, your soul is going to be splitting, like your soul is going to be floating without any, because the point is to, like, put it inside of a crystal, but it'll be out there floating with nowhere to latch onto, so her body's going to be alive, but it's going to be like basically like Odette's situation, but I guess being like she won't be able to jump back in her own body. Like, if anything, she'd probably have to do an Odette and basically jump in. I wonder how that would work, considering her soul is not just hers. Like, would that mean her and Odette still bound together soul-wise, or would that, in that moment, their souls, even when they left her body, would be separate? I'm curious how that would have worked. But either way, it's like, yeah, that would have been a bad situation, especially because George hasn't told Nick what she was up to, because she didn't want to get Nick's hopes up about it. Like, he knew they were looking for the Soul Splitter, because, like, right, we got to be a lot more open about what's going on here, which is ironic. We'll get to why that's ironic later on. But George, like I said, didn't want to, like, get his hopes up, but for her, it's not just about his hopes up. This is her hope. She wants it done today because she wants to be able to have the rest of her life. Granted, yes, there's a 10-year period, but there's still also that whole, like, cool, you're supposed to die within a year thing that's still lingering over her head, and it still could come back to pass anyway. Just George is kind of unlucky in many different regards amongst the team, but maybe that's what that was supposed to be representative of. So that might not longer be over her head, because she did die because of the whole Igleka situation. And so maybe because of that, maybe that counted as like that 1 year, like you're going to die within a year. So like maybe that's what that was representative of. So it's already off the table, and all she had to worry about was the 10 years. I don't know if they probably did clarify it. I'm just not remembering. I don't remember they clarified that being the 1 year thing of like, yeah, when she spilled over the bucket of blood, her dying then was that, but Nancy brought her back. So technicalities, your way around it. But then she got the 10-year thing because of Odette. But, the Soul Splitter didn't work the way they were hoping it would. I mean, it is actually it was so interesting how it works like that. Like, obviously, it's like the brighter color is George's, the lighter color is Odette. So the point is to spin it. And I thought they were going to have to measure it out themselves. It's like, no, it naturally does it itself. Basically, it spins it and then cuts it in half. Like, it turns into a blue and a red. I'm like, how do you know immediately who's whose? But it's like, I guess the red is representative of the natural soul, the blue is the foreign soul. So, Bess was happy because it's like, oh, here's Odette. She's in a crystal form, but trying to put George's soul back didn't work. It's like something's not right here, and that's because Nancy ended up finding out that the person who made this, BD, his initials are also on the lock. So he's the locksmith, the blacksmith that ended up making the cage, the lock, and even this. So all that's connected. So, because he made a knockoff Soul Splitter because the rest were destroyed. So his knockoff is the only one left. But Nancy looked into it. The Soul Splitter wasn't meant to separate and untangle souls. It was meant to split a single soul. So now it's a situation of Nancy's like, the only way around this is if you destroy Odette, which is like, wait, no. The best is like, no, like I was hoping to. And then like Nancy's like, wait, were you hoping to like separate their souls and then find another body for Odette? And she was like, no. But she's like, once I got talking to Father, like, that father they talked to the other episode, it made her go like, oh, like it started presenting an idea of hope or whatever, especially now that she knew for sure, like she hoped that Odette was still in there, because she'd been in there the entire time. She just promised not to surface again, because she knew, right, you only have 10 years and I'm not going to take another minute, another day from you. So, but she popped up partway when George was kind of passing out. So there's a part of Bess that's hoping like, no, I can find a way around this. We don't have to destroy her. And she ran away with Odette. And even she talks to Nancy. She's like, you must think I'm an awful person. She's like, no, you have an attachment to someone. That's never like a bad thing. It takes a lot of courage to be attached. Because I think because Nancy's talking, I think, from her own perspective, where it's like she kind of cut herself off from people for a long time after her mom died. So she knows what it's like. That it's kind of hard. It's never the easiest thing putting yourself out there, putting your heart out there, and caring about someone like that. It's like I was so caught up in wanting to save George, especially because for Nancy, it's like I'm the reason this is all happening. Odette would be at peace. George wouldn't be in the situation that she's in right now if it wasn't for me. So it's like, you know, I need to give everything to make sure that George survives this. Like it's up, like I owe her because I'm the one that kind of did this, and that's why it's like I didn't think about too much about like what Odette means to you, and so it's like. She didn't plan this out from the beginning, but then, like, she never thought she would have to say goodbye to Odette this soon because it's like, George was so caught up in wanting to save her own life that she didn't really take the time to think about it, too, like, how hard this would be for her. Because I think at the very least, whether or not it was ever going to be able to put her into a body, I don't know how that was going to work. You find a recently deceased person put in, you know, Odette in their body. But I think at the very least, she was, you know, probably going to at least hold on to the crystal because at least that way she'd be able to keep Odette with her. But it doesn't seem like that's a possibility now, you know, and it's just like, it's a complicated thing of like, yeah, like she's your soulmate. She's the love of your life. And the sad thing is because also like Odette never had an easy life. She fell in love and, you know, she was never able to live her life. Her love went off and had a family of her own. And it's just like, it's heartbreaking that she was cut down so young. And at the very least, this way, she can potentially be united with her love. Because even she's like, because Nancy's like, I get it. Like, you know, she's like, she wanted to believe, like, she's like, every little thing, I've always thought it was like my mom. Here and there, like, oh, when a friend called me out of the blue or when something would happen, like she'd always kind of associate with like, yeah, her mom watching over her, making something happen, and her mom was always like with her. That at least she was like, that's my perspective on it. But for Bess, when it comes to Odette thing, it's like it's a little different, but it's because she wanted to know like, how do we know that they're at peace? Do you believe that they're at peace? And like Nancy used to not know, but now she's like, I have no doubts now. I know that they'll find peace. After everything that they've experienced, it's like I know that they will. And so Bess has to break the crystal. And that in turn does bring George back. And now George has her full life in front of her. You know? And it's heartbreaking that Bess had to Bess had to get rid of Odette, you know? But like I said, in some level, I hope that, you know, because she never had any peace. You know, she was the Aglaika for so long. So for her to finally be able to rest after everything, which actually parallels to Nick's side of things, which I'll go ahead and talk about it. But at least with Nick's situation, he was talking to Addie early in the episode, and she talked about like kind of like dealing with trauma because the kids were talking to Nick about like, oh, did you ever go to college? Because he talked about his football career and everything, like, and he never actually went to college. And they're like, why? He was like, an incident happened, I got arrested. But he was like, yeah, everything kind of worked out in the end. But even Addie talked about like growing up on the reservation, like. How tough life can be in general, and her own brother, was it her, I can't remember, she said it was like her brother, her cousin took their life, just because of the struggles of life, and she's like, yeah, she went on a walk, and it, like one of like, I think one of those like spiritual trail type of walks, and it kind of put her on a right path again. And it's like, oh, what did you do? And obviously for Nick, he talks about everything that, you know, obviously he went to jail. He came to thank the social worker that worked with him. That was Nancy's mom. But by the time he found out, like, she passed away. Then his friend, Tiffany, passed away. It's just been one thing after another. And it's in that moment that it's like, he's like, I came to Horseshoe Bend, like, I bought a business, I got engaged, I started dating someone, me and Nancy dated for a while, we broke up, and then me and George started dating, and now we're engaged, and now a lot of stuff in his life is happening fast, but you also realize, like, talking, because even Addie was like, wow, that's like 10 different journeys. But for him, it's like, it shows that Nick hasn't really processed all the trauma. Like, because it's always been one thing after another, after another, after another. At least, like, Nancy throughout all this was able to process, like, everything about her mom. About the real, like, she had last season to really kind of process her way through being a Hudson, finding out the truth about Ryan being her dad, her mom being Lucy Sable. Like, she was able to kind of work her way through it to some extent. But now you have, now Nick needed that. And so he leaves his phone behind and he left without telling George. That's why I was bringing up earlier, like, oh, irony about being upfront. To be fair, he couldn't get in touch with George, but he was like, I just want to hear your voice, because I think it all just started hitting him. But side note, those kids, they were like, oh, we need, like, they want to replicate their favorite anime arc, and it's a pirate ship, and they need the ocean. I was like, are we talking One Piece here? What arc are you talking about, kids? Let me know. It better not be an arc that I'm not familiar with. Like, if you want anywhere from the beginning of this series to the end of Punk Hazard Island, I got you. Anything beyond that, because once again, that's where I left off in the series like years ago. I need to pick up One Piece once again. But, like, it could be any anime, but I hear pirate ship and ocean, I'm like, One Piece, One Piece. Especially because it's a shonen anime, so it's like shonen anime and manga, so it's going to have like the largest reach, especially amongst kids. Like, you know, shonen typically demographically is like 10 to 18-year-olds. I mean, granted, you can be outside of that demographic, but that's usually the demographic shonen aims for. But regardless, I was like, One Piece, it has to be. They made sure not to say the name, but I'm like, it has to be One Piece. But it could be there's so many anime I've never watched, so it could be anything. But my mind immediately went One Piece. Nevertheless, I went on my little geeky, nerdy tangent. But aside from that, it is kind of messed up. He did that without telling her, but I get it. It's like, you have a lot to process. Like, he needs to take time for himself because, like I said, it's just been one thing after another. Hasn't really taken time to process everything. And I think because he wants to figure out, like, because he's like, yeah, sometimes he sits there and thinks like, oh yeah, this is my life, and he has to figure things out for himself. Hopefully that doesn't end with a heartbreaking situation. He comes back and like ends his engagement to George, or maybe George will be like, yo, you walked away without telling me, you left without like, what's up with that? Especially because he left his phone behind, but the whole point was like to leave everything behind so that you can just focus on you and clear your head. You know, Vic, aka Cyborg, was kind of going through a similar thing in his own journey in this in season 3 of Doom Patrol. So there's an interesting parallel that can be drawn there as well. But that's what I think is so interesting, because obviously Nick's not at peace, but like obviously like Bess wanting Odette to be at peace, even burying her in the backyard. You know, it's like, right, Nancy says this is where the lilacs grow, and obviously that was like your favorite. So but just give me a sign that you're at peace. And Addie shows up, so it's like, right, me and my ex have moved on, but it's like, right, I'd love to go on a second date with you, actual, you know, pick a place for an actual dinner, and then we can actually have a conversation. So Bess is able to kind of move forward, because that's been holding her back the entire time, because like no one was ever going to be Odette, because Odette was the love of her life. She knows exactly where her love of her life was, but she can't be with her, so she had to say goodbye. At the very least, the goodbye before was never like solidified, because it was like, right, I always knew where she was. I couldn't talk to her and access her, but I always knew where she was. Now she's actually gone, so she had to like fully say goodbye. So I didn't talk about it earlier, but Carson did have to go lawyer mode, even though he was stuck in teenage mode, when he had to like present like why they had to like, he had to present a case of like why they can't get access to Mr. Bobbsey's stuff until later, until they ascertain some of the stuff in there. Luckily, Ryan, being the bro that he was, had his back, because he's like, oh man, I should have told him everything. Because like he had that sweet, Carson had that sweet moment with Gene. He's like, yeah, like when I'm around you, like my heart beats. And like Nancy's like, oh, my dad's not feeling well, let's go. And Ryan's like, oh, did you tell her? He's like, no, almost, I was so close. He's like, oh, next time, bro, next time. I love it. It's so cool. Because I mean, even just teenage wise, it's so dope to see them bonding, but it's reflected, because even them as adults, like they kind of like bust each other chops a little bit, but I was like, yeah, like they both unified in being dads for Nancy, but also I think they are becoming friends. Ironically enough, you never would have thought you see that day coming, but lo and behold, here it is. They are legitimate friends, so I think that's pretty dope. But yeah, him playing the role of trying to be a lawyer, but then like Ryan comes in and covers for him and be like, yeah, there's at least a Hudson item in there that I want to clarify. So it's like, right, we have to save this for another day. So you have, you know, until Ryan, you know, Mr. Hudson files the proper paperwork. But luckily, when it was all said and done, they finally reverted back to their normal selves. And they have some memory of what happened. And he's just like, Carson's like, oh, Gene. He's like, it's okay. You could one of two things. One, completely ignore it, pretend like it never happened, or you basically confront the fact is that, yeah, it did happen, and kind of deal with the aftermath of it. And he goes to go see Gene. And I love that Ryan's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna keep this guitar, because for him it's like, he's like, I told Lucy I'd someday learn how to play guitar, but his parents never co-signed it. But he's like, nah, I figure I might as well do that. You know, it's like spending all this time around Nancy, you know, she starts to rub off on you how passionate she is about everything. It makes you want to be a better person. And Ace is like, yeah, I know. Ivan Love later on, he's like, oh, calling him Mr. D, like Carson. Why are you calling Carson Mr. D? And he's like, oh, that's like me calling you Mr. Actually, what is your last name? I'm like, that's probably an inside joke, because it's like, right. I don't think we ever found out what Ace's last name actually is. But Carson and Gene did have their moment at the end where he was just kind of like, yeah, I do have something to tell you. I'm sorry I wasn't myself, or at least the best version of myself. And he's like, yeah, I like you, Gene. And it's like actually really sweet and endearing. And I'm like, you go, Carson. You go, Gene. You two look so cute together. And I love that she kind of like, when she was responding to him, obviously she was kind of a little bit in lawyer mode with how she, in the way that she was like responding to him, being like, oh, but if that's true, then could the thing that you were wondering about would be like how this would feel. And you're like, yeah, that's so awesome. I mean, despite the Nick thing, everything else did work out, but still, like, I doubt that's something that's... I'm curious to see if that's something that's going to immediately get resolved. Of like, oh, Nick's immediately going to be back next episode. Is he just going to be gone and we're not... It's just them figuring out, like, where'd Nick go? Why did he suddenly leave? Did he get cold feet about this? Like, oh, will they start thinking, like, oh, did something happen to him? I'm curious to see what kind of this... I don't know. I'm getting the feeling like we might not see Nick at all next episode, or maybe we will focus on some of what he's up to while bouncing back to the group as they're trying to figure things out about, like, well, what happened? Why'd he suddenly leave? So we'll have to wait and see where all this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.